Good afternoon, everybody. This is Greg Minnie. I'm the Industry and Business Enablement Manager for the NEM Reform Program. We are having a number of folk join our general briefing, so we'll just wait on hold for a minute or two just to let the lobby clear and everybody arrive. Okay. Uh, Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our NEM Reform Program General Stakeholder and Roadmap Briefing. Just to introduce myself, I'm Greg Minnie. I'm the Industry and Business Enablement Manager for the NEM Reform Program, and I'll be joined by a number of my colleagues here in the Industry Enablement team to walk through this general briefing. So welcome. We still have a number of people joining, but I think we've got a pretty full agenda, so we will kick off. So if we could just go on to the next slide, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, seas, and waters across Australia. We honour the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, past and present, and embrace their future generations. I myself am working on the lands of the Wurundjeri people and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Okay, as we start this briefing, just a couple of housekeeping aspects. One, a general disclaimer. This is a general briefing. It's outlining AEMO's interpretation of indicative impacts on a number of the NEM market reforms to the energy systems. And we're just pointing out there that our interpretations are not binding on an AEMO. We're providing you our best view at this current time, but please do your own due diligence on potential impacts, etc. Okay, on the next slide, I think we've got a number of general housekeeping points here. Microphones will be kept muted throughout the forum. This is a general briefing. That said, we have a Q&A function within MS Teams for people to ask questions. You'll see highlighted there on the screen the icon. If you click on that, that will open the Q&A. And what we'll look to do is we will look to source and respond to your question throughout the session on that Q&A feature. We do have some time at the conclusion of today's session, where there have been a number of themes of provided questions, and we will run through those as well. And just lastly, by participating in this event, you are please engage constructively, show respect during the call when utilising the Q&A, and in particular, please familiarise yourself with AEMO's competition law meeting protocol as detailed in Appendix B, and it's available on AEMO's website. Okay, with that, let us move on to the next slide. And just want to highlight the objectives of today's session. It is to provide an overview of AEMO's NEM reform program, the current initiatives, the roadmap for implementation and its impact potential impact to various industry participants. This is, we have had a number of these, so this is highlighting the changes that have taken place since our last briefing in November, the initiatives that have moved on, the initiatives that have been added, and a number of updates. And in doing that, we will walk through our in-flight or initiatives grouped by hopefully somewhat logical areas, and we'll also provide an overview of the updates to the implementation roadmap that was published on the 11th of May. Probably the two key things here are the focus of this session is on the implementation of those initiatives, and in general they have reached a final rule or a policy determination. Today's session doesn't cover the merit of the rule or the policy in its development, or the reasons behind the decision for the rule commencement. So we're really focused on the implementation of those initiatives here. And the second aspect, we're aiming to provide participants with a broad understanding. So we're not doing deep dives into initiatives, but it's really a broad brush approach to provide a context for all of the things that are going on over the next couple of years as they emerge. If we move on then to the next slide, and we'll just have a quick look at the agenda. Ulrika will provide a context and a program overview for the NEM reform program. Then we will dive into those initiatives that are well and truly underway. We've grouped them by those that are in general retail and metering initiatives, wholesale initiatives, those that are related to distributed energy resources, and then that last group there, foundation and strategic. So these are all of the initiatives that are in flight, and then a snapshot of emerging initiatives, anticipated initiatives, those that are going through policy development. They may have had draft determinations or be in the scoping stage, and they will be added into the program as they reach that determination stage. Then Michelle will provide an overview of the implementation roadmap and some of the tools that are available to participants to understand potential impacts on their organisation's timing, etc. We'll have time for Q&A. And then as a wrap up, how to get involved should your organisation wish to become more fully engaged with the NEM reform program as it goes forward. So with that, I will hand over to Ulrika to run us through just some of the context for what we're going to be talking about and provide a general program overview. Ulrika, over to you.
Thanks, Greg. Just checking that you can hear me okay. Yep, fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ulrika Lindholm. I'm the manager for industry enablement for the NEM reform program, working with this great crew here. And I'm looking to give you a brief overview of the background and context of the NEM reform program. Next slide. Yeah, perfect. So what is the NEM reform program? It is a comprehensive and well-established by now program underway since 2021 to implement changes that enable Australia's transition to a future where there are more renewables and diverse technologies on the grid. We're also seeing fewer coal power plants, and that together drives a need for measures to enable a stable and secure grid. This involves modernization of digital and market systems and processes to support and operate the market and system now and into the future, and which altogether represents one of the most significant modernizations of the NEM in almost 30 years. This enables, in the end, amongst many other outcomes, more renewable energy to reach consumers, increased safety and security of the power system, increased efficiencies for energy market participants, and the encouragement of more investment in renewable infrastructure. As mentioned by Greg earlier, our focus within the program is on implementation of those initiatives that have reached a final rule or policy determination through statutory processes managed by the rulemaker, the Australian Energy Market Commission, or government policy, or it may have been a strategic opportunity by EMA to uplift some of our systems and capabilities to enable reform or strengthen critical operational capabilities. And in aiming to achieve those outcomes, really what has been the really key and integral to this program's success to date has been the collaboration with the market participants and broader ecosystem and IMO, and that includes many of you who are on the call today. It does represent a very broad collaboration effort, and I would certainly like to take a moment and on behalf of the team to thank everyone for their efforts. So next one, if we can move to, yes, beautiful. So next one is a snapshot of the scope of the program in the form of a hand fan, if you like. So we will spend some time on the current initiatives in a moment. So this is more intended to provide you with a sense of the areas of reform and change, which continues to evolve. And these are the pathways represented by the fan blades in this image. And you may be thinking that this looks familiar, but that it's slightly different, and that is accurate. It's reflecting what is in the latest version of the NEM reform implementation roadmap, version 8, which reflects how the program has evolved and matured over time. The second half of this session focuses on the updates, and we'll provide you some more detail on that. What remains the same, though, is that at the center remains the core objective of enabling the energy transition in Australia. And in each of these individual pathways represents initiatives at either policy development or implementation stage across the usual segments of the market, wholesale, retail, etc. And underneath each initiative is an extraordinary amount of work and collaboration. Happy to move on to the next one. All right, so I mentioned that the program has been underway for some time, and a large number of initiatives have been delivered already. Here's a snapshot of what's been delivered in the last 12 months alone. It has included initiatives such as frequency performance payments, SCADA Lite updates to SDPASA, metering services review, and improving security frameworks. There are some fairly significant changes to AIMO and to the markets incorporated into this last 12 months alone. So these are not future concepts, right? They're real changes already embedded in market operations. And as you can imagine, delivery at this scale relies on a few key things. And that includes really strong industry collaboration and collaboration with broader ecosystem stakeholders and consultation. It also requires really strong integrated planning across the program and by IMO, but also together as one industry. And it does really require providing forward visibility to support participant readiness and planning. So I suggest that the key takeaway for you on the call today is that reform continues to be developed and delivered at pace and at scale. And you should expect a continued cadence of releases and need to actively articulate requirements for you and plan for your readiness for the things that are impacting your organization. And we're here to work with you on that. So more information about how to get involved in this will be covered at the end of the session. I'm happy to pause there, Greg. I believe it's my last slide for a moment.
Thanks, Ulrika. And yes, I think as Ulrika is pointing out, very much the scope and of this program is very much one that evolves as the energy transition proceeds. And so with that, we would like to provide some background briefings. And Gary, if we could just roll on to the next slide or two, on some of the what we're terming our in-flight initiatives. So these are the ones that are deep in implementation. There'll be a focus on with a number of committed commencements in 2026, 2027, and reaching through to 2028. And that reflects, I guess, the timeframes in the regulatory process and the background and build-up of a number of those transitions. So what we'll do, we'll run through them in a series of groups. So the first is a grouping of what we're terming our retail and metering initiatives, and that groups they have initiatives from a number of the pathways, in particularly retail and market interfaces, and some that are enabling the demand side participation. So there's about 3 initiatives here, and I'll hand over to Radhika and Jen to provide an overview of each of those.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. We'll just move on to the next slide. Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. For those I haven't met, I am Rad from AEMO's NEM Reform Program, and today I'll be taking you through a quick update on the Metering Services Review, specifically Basic Power Quality Data, or BPQD, because I know we love an acronym-heavy industry here. What I'll do today is I'll just give you a really high-level overview of what the reform is aiming to do, where things are currently at from an implementation perspective, and what that means for participants heading into testing and ultimately go live. So hopefully by the end of all of this, BPQD will feel slightly less scary than it sounds. I'll just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just to level set everyone first, BPQD reform comes out of AEMC's Accelerating Smart Meter Deployment Final Rule, which was published in November 2024. And at a really high level, what this is trying to achieve is better visibility of low voltage network conditions through the use of smart meter data. As more CER is coming into the system, we've got rooftop solar, we've got batteries, we've got EVs. DNSPs obviously need better visibility of what's happening at the edge of the grid, and BPQD is intended to support just that. So the rule requires a set of basic power quality measurements to be provided to the LNSP, and that includes things like volts, amps, phase, and angle data. And from an AEMO perspective, our role is really around defining the exchange architecture and the service design to support delivery of that data via the IDX platform. In terms of key benefits, I think this is really important because this reform isn't a reform just for reform's sake. The intent here is to help DNSPs better manage network performance, improve hosting capacity for CER, reduce risks around voltage and neutral integrity issues, and ideally get more value out of existing network infrastructure rather than constantly having to build more of it. In terms of where we are at, industry testing is currently scheduled to commence later in this month, with the rule commencement date sitting at 1st of July 2026. And that's the point where metering coordinators will be required to provide BPQD for applicable smart meter installations to local network service providers. So still a bit of runway ahead of us, but definitely now moving into that phase where industry readiness and testing is becoming a much bigger focus. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. Thank you. In terms of impacts, this reform is really most relevant for DNSPs, metering coordinators, and metering providers. You'll see that there's minimal impact across areas like bidding, dispatch, and settlements. This is really more of a retail and metering focused reform. At a participant level, the key change is essentially around the sending and receiving of BPQD through the IDX mechanism. So metering coordinators will need to ensure BPQD is being sent appropriately, and LNSPs will need to manage the capability to receive and utilize that data. And look, I think one thing we're very conscious of at AMO is that industry is managing a really significant reform pipeline at the moment. So we're just trying to make sure that engagement is practical, our testing is structured, and participants have enough visibility of what's coming and when. In terms of immediate and next steps, current focus is really on the system development activities across both AMO and participant sides, as well as the preparation for industry testing in which we are commencing later this month. So that was all BPQD. We will now move on to the very next one, which is flexible trading arrangements, or FTA. And this is probably one of the more interesting reforms in the pipeline because it really starts to shift the way consumers can participate in the market things through flexible CER. At a very high level, this reform is about enabling more visibility and separation between a customer's passive load and flexible CER assets, things like batteries, EVs, and other controllable devices. So today, I'll just walk through what that reform is trying to achieve, where implementation activities are currently sitting, and what that means from an industry readiness perspective. As an overview of FTA, so at the moment, there is still a lot of regulatory and technical barriers that make it difficult for consumers to fully participate in flexibility markets using CER assets. And FTA is really intended to unlock that. This reform enables customers to separate their primary connection point from flexible CER assets through what's called secondary settlement points. And what that essentially means in practice is that customers can engage multiple service providers for different energy services. So for example, one retailer for their general household consumption and a separate one that could manage a battery or an EV charging service. And I think that's where this starts becoming quite interesting from an innovation perspective because it creates opportunities for more dynamic energy products and services moving forward. In terms of key benefits, this reform is really about improving visibility and separation of flexible CER, increasing customer choice and supporting more cost-effective metering arrangements, particularly for assets or sites that historically may not have been separately metered. There are also new metering types proposed under the reform, which allow embedded measurement capabilities in devices like EV chargers, street lights, and batteries. In terms of key dates, there are really two key dates to be aware of. The first one is coming very, very soon, so 31st of May, which is the effective date for Type 9 metering installations, so release 1 of FTA. And then we have the final rule effective date of 1st of November 2026, which is release 2 for FTA as well. So again, a phased implementation approach. We've got industry testing and readiness activities already underway for this one. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. In terms of impacts, this reform touches quite a broad cross-section of industry participants. That includes LNSPs, retailers, aggregators, metering providers, metering coordinators, and also the newly introduced NEM service provider role. At a participant level, one of the bigger changes is around registration and accreditation arrangements, specifically the ability to apply to become a NEM service provider for secondary settlement points. There are also changes required across market settlement and transfer solutions, metering data processes and data exchange capabilities to support participation in the reform. And I think this is one of those reforms where the technical implementation piece is obviously important, but industry coordination and operational readiness are also equally critical because there are quite a few moving parts and participant interactions involved. In terms of the next steps, procedure consultations have already concluded. Technical specifications for the May 2026 release have been published, and industry testing for Type 9 Go Live is currently underway. And at this stage, development activities supporting the November 2026 release also remain on track. So we'll continue engaging closely with industry through ITWG and broader reform forums as the implementation progresses. And as always, if you want to read a little bit more about FTA or all the other reform initiatives we are covering, we've got links to all the initiative web pages right there on the slide back as well, if you want to go a little bit deep into that. And with that, I will hand over to Jen.
Thanks, Rad, and nice to be here today. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm Jen Marin. I'm also within the NEM reform team, and I've been with AEMO sort of just over 18 months now. So a good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to be covering off a reform within retail, and then a couple within the wholesale electricity area, and then IPRR, which is under distributed energy resources, towards the end. Okay, so starting with real-time data. Thanks, Gary. Okay, so why provide consumers with access to the data in their smart meters in real time? So if consumers were able to access the real-time data or energy data in real time, the thinking is that they can gain a better understanding of the way that they use their household energy, and then they can make more informed decisions and utilise better energy management practices. So the draft rule put out by the AEMC states that all consumers should have access to real-time data as part of their electricity service. So this means that all of the current meters out there will be progressively upgraded to enable this access to real-time data. And ultimately, this will be at no charge. So thinking about the benefits, so by choosing to share their energy data with third-party providers, consumers can access services such as personalised energy insights, perhaps some automated bill saving tools, or tailored advice on how to manage their energy usage over time and hopefully save on their electricity bill. So looking at some key dates there, so full enablement obligations are quite far in advance. So that's the 30th of November 2028. It will take quite a lot of time to upgrade these meters to be able to provide this access in real time. And on the 30th of November, small customer metering installations will be able to then communicate real-time data wirelessly. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Gary. So who does this reform impact? So retailers, metering coordinators, real-time data authorised recipients, and of course consumers, as I've mentioned. So change impacts are to the retail and metering providers, and that includes changes to small customer metering installations so that they are able and capable of facilitating access to real-time data. Changes to B2B to enable transfer of real-time data requests and information, and changes to the AEMO system called MSATs to enable visibility of real-time data information as well. So thinking about next steps, we've actually commenced consultation on real-time data initiative with our first stage or package 1, and participant responses are due by the 16th of June. If you wanted to view that, that's available online. So you can find out more information by heading to the real-time data page, which is on the AEMO website. You can have a look at the initiative brief, or you can email us there at NEM Reform. I think that's it. Thank you, Raj. Back to you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Radhika. And as you can see, the last couple of initiatives there are very much facilitating further participation at a consumer level via retailer MC offerings. So this next group of initiatives that we wish to walk you through is what we're calling a wholesale, and these really focus on updates to settlement market processes and the interaction with a number of system operational capabilities. And with that, I believe I'm handing back to Radhika for the first of the wholesale updates.
I think it's Jen speaking to the next one. It's SSA.
Sorry, Jen, I apologize.
That's okay. I thought it might have been Rad, but it's not. It's me. All good. So yes, as I mentioned, I'll be covering a couple of reforms in the wholesale electricity market space, including shortening the settlement cycle, which is the first one, and then also Project Energy Connect market integration. Okay, thanks, Gary. So why shorten the settlement cycle? So it can be difficult for some market participants to meet the credit support requirements of the market. So in particular, smaller retailers, you may not just have that sort of collateral. So they may struggle to have sufficient cash flow to offset the prudential requirements that we ask for. So the combination of the cover required, the unpaid days accrued, and the high price events can create a challenge for them. So by shortening the settlement cycle, participants are required to provide credit support at 9 business days versus the current 20 business days. So the key benefits are really a decrease in the working capital requirements that I mentioned, and this can encourage further market participation amongst those smaller players, which we want to do. And this lowers barriers to entry as well. So this can create increased competition and an environment for innovation and reduction in the risk of failure. Consumers obviously also benefit. So they benefit from more choice, more retailer offers because there are more retailers in the market, and ultimately better electricity prices. So thinking about key dates to remember, so shortening settlement cycle is going to commence quite soon, so the 9th of August, and that will start also mark the start of a transitional period that will end on the 17th of October. Next slide, thanks, Gary. So this reform impacts financially responsible market participants and also metering data providers. And participant change impacts are to settlements, retail and metering, and prudentials. The next steps really for us at this stage is we are quite close to launch, is around implementation and testing. So we have a market trial and this will commence on the 29th of June, and we have a nominated number of market participants for that trial already. We also expect that our wholesale procedure consultations will be completed in July, and the final rule will commence, as I said, on the 9th of August of this year. So if you'd like more information, you can head to the SSC page on the website. As I mentioned previously, you can have a look at the initiative brief or you can email us. Okay, and it's me again. I'm going to take you through Project Energy Connect. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so Project Energy Connect market integration. So you may be aware this has had a fair bit of media and press. The wider sort of Project Energy Connect, which is between AEMO, Electronet, and Transgrid, and we've essentially partnered together to deliver 900 kilometres worth of bidirectional capacity as part of that wider sort of project. And the project's been split into 2 stages. So once stage 2 is complete, it will create a parallel transmission configuration between the 3 adjacent regions. So those being South Australia, New South Wales, and Victoria. And this does present new challenges for the NEMs. This is not something we've necessarily done before, and especially for the way that negative interregional settlement residue is managed. So as part of stage 2, AEMO will integrate this Project Energy Connect into our dispatch and settlement systems, and we'll be delivering market design changes to accommodate this. The changes include a rule change for negative residue management and also relevant procedure changes off the back of that. So key benefits are around ensuring the efficient integration of PEC as per the AEMC rule change and avoiding negative residues and heavily constrained flows. The additional capacity will actually directly benefit consumers. So in times of high demand, the transmission network will be able to transport electricity across those borders and provide additional electricity when it's needed. And consumers will also benefit from lower power prices and improved energy security. So thinking about key dates, we have done a lot of consultation already, but we are looking to start consultation around the procedures to incorporate PEC into our dispatch and settlement systems later this month. And we anticipate that the construction of Project Energy Connect Stage 2 will be completed later this year. So from October, we'll look to cut over into AEMO systems. Next slide, thanks. So the reform impacts coordinating network service providers, generators or integrated service providers, and also settlement residue auction participants. And change impacts include new interconnector representation, price formation impacts, and settlement outcomes. So thinking about next steps, we have 2 releases for this project. So the first release will be that early August date that I mentioned for our dispatch systems, and the second release will be the 1st of November for the settlement changes. And then that new interconnector or that cutover will be effective as of the 1st of October. So if you'd like to find out more, again, you can head to the initiative page on the website, the initiative brief, or you can email us. Okay, that is it for me for wholesale. Back to you, Greg.
Okay, and Leonard, I think you're up next to take us through an overview of cash security.
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this briefing. My name is Leonard Bain, and I'm part of the NEM Reform Programs in Industry Enablement team. Today, I'll be talking about cash security, which aims to lower barriers to NEM participation by easing credit support requirements. At the moment, participants generally need to provide credit support through bank guarantees. For smaller or prospective retailers, that can be difficult because financing costs are higher, access to capital can be more limited, and the process can take time, especially when prices are high and prudential requirements rise quickly. To respond to that, the AEMC made a final rule change in June 2025, and that allows AEMO to accept cash as an alternative form of credit support. That rule is due to take effect from 1 November. So AEMO's role here is to put the right procedures, systems, and readiness activities in place so participants are in a position to decide whether cash security is the right option for them. In terms of timing, there are 3 key milestones to note. First, the cash security guidelines will be published by 1 August. Second, industry testing is planned for October 2026. And third, the rule will formally commence on 1 November. The key benefit is optionality. It allows participants to choose the form of credit support that best suits their circumstances, introducing reliance on third-party instruments and lowering the risk of default caused by timing delays. Over time, this is expected to support competition and new entry in the retail market, with longer-term benefits for consumers. Next slide, please. This slide covers who the reform affects and what participants may want to think about now. The first point is that cash security is optional. Financial responsible market participants, typically retailers, can decide whether it makes sense for them. For participants who choose to use it, there are 2 practical changes to keep in mind. There will be some changes to prudential processes, including how cash is provided to AEMO and returned. These changes will be supported through updates to AEMO's existing systems rather than new platforms. For AEMO, this is a cross-functional change involving market operations, settlements, prudentials, finance, legal, and digital delivery. Looking ahead, there are a few milestones participants should be aware of. A draft industry test strategy is due this month. The consultation on credit limit procedures closes on 20th of May. The final cash security guidelines are expected by June the 5th. Updated technical specifications, data model version 5.8 are planned for September. Industry testing is scheduled to commence in October 2026. As these materials are released, we encourage impacted participants, particularly retailers, to consider whether cash security could be a useful option ahead of the November 2026 commencement date. On that note, I will pass back to Greg.
Thanks, Leonard,
Thank you.
for that update. The next 2 initiatives in this section will be covered by Radhika. The first being Improving Security Frameworks, ISF. And for those who this is really an update and progressing on from that rule commencement from December of last year. So, Radhika, back to you.
Thanks, Greg. All right, so the next reform I'll touch on, like Greg mentioned, is ISF, or Improving Security Frameworks. Now, this one sits a little differently to some of the other reforms we've spoken about, because the focus here is really around enhancing system security capabilities as the generation mix across the NEM continues to evolve. And I think we all know that the power system is becoming significantly more complex to operate, particularly with increasing variable renewable generation and more extreme weather events as well. So this reform is really about making sure the framework supporting system security evolve alongside that. So again, at a very high level, the reform recognizes that historically a lot of essential system security services were effectively provided as a byproduct of synchronous generation. So things like large coal and gas units. But as the system is changing, we can't necessarily rely on those traditional sources in the same way moving forward. So the rule introduces new mechanisms that allow AEMO to procure and enable system security contracts more effectively from providers and TNSPs, while also creating better incentives for participants to invest in these services longer term. And really the broader intent here is to improve transparency, reduce reliance on directions, and strengthen AEMO's ability to maintain system security through the transition. In terms of the key benefits, the reform creates a clearer value stream for providers of security services, improves visibility around system security needs, and gives participants greater certainty around how these services may be scheduled and enabled. It's also intended to support more informed decision-making as we move into a much more dynamic and decentralized energy system. In terms of implementation timing, there are a key few milestones to be aware here. We had the security enablement procedures come into effect last year on 31st of August, and full enablement obligations and rules commenced on date, like Greg mentioned, on the 2nd of December last year. Moving on to this year, we've got the enhanced manual solution releasing into production in June, followed by the automated solution and indicative reporting capabilities in October 2026. So this is very much a phased delivery approach with capability uplift occurring progressively over time. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. Perfect. In terms of impacts, this reform is primarily relevant for generators, integrated resource providers, and transmission network service providers, or TNSPs, involved in providing contracted system security services. At a participant level, there are impacts across bidding and dispatch, settlements, and operational business processes. For example, providers of system security services will need to support operational information exchange requirements to enable AEMO scheduling activities, while TNSPs may need to align certain business processes with AEMO security enablement procedures. And again, I think this is one of those reforms where operational readiness is really important because there's a strong interaction between systems, operational processes, and security outcomes. In terms of the next steps, release 1.1a, which is the enhanced manual solution, is scheduled for 3rd of June. We have the updated security enablement procedures that are planned for release in July 2026, followed by release 1.1b, the automated solution, going live in October 2026. So as always, we'll continue working closely with impacted participants as those milestones approach and provide further updates through the usual reform engagement channels. And as usual, if you'd like to read up a little bit more about ISF, those links on the slide deck should take you to the initiative webpage on our website. And with that, we are done with ISF, so we will move on to the next one, which is inverter dispatch. So inverter dispatch project is really focused on modernizing the way AEMO coordinates inverter-based resources across the power system. And I think it's fair to say this is becoming increasingly important as inverter-based generation continues growing quite rapidly across the NEM. At the moment, a lot of these processes still rely very heavily on manual communication and operational workarounds, which, as you can imagine, becomes increasingly difficult to scale in a much more dynamic system. So this initiative is really about improving that operational capability, visibility, and coordination outcomes for both AMO and the participants. So at a very high level, like I mentioned, the approach used for coordinating inverter-based resources is quite manual at the moment, is very ad hoc, and time-sensitive communication processes between AMO participants and the NSPs. And while these arrangements have worked reasonably well to date, they don't necessarily scale effectively as inverter-based resources become a much larger part of the generation mix. So what this initiative aims to do is streamline and modernize those processes using existing market systems and technology. At a practical level, that includes things like electronically sending in inverter limits through EMMS data model and SCADA systems, introducing conformance monitoring, and enabling alerts to participants where required. And honestly, one of the biggest operational benefits here is simply reducing reliance on phone calls and manual intervention from control room operations, which I think everyone involved would probably appreciate. In terms of the key benefits really center around earlier and more consistent communication of inverter limits, better operational visibility, and improved planning capability for participants. Importantly, participants will be able to see inverter limits reflected through pre-dispatch reporting, which supports more proactive operational decision-making. In terms of timing, the interim solution was deployed into production on 31st of March this year, and we have the comprehensive solution planned for the 30th of November this year. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. Perfect. In terms of impacts, this initiative primarily affects semi-scheduled generators, bidirectional units, integrated resource providers, and network service providers. There is also impacts for third-party service providers supporting generators in BESS operations, particularly where inverter limits need to be operationalized quickly in response to system security requirements. At a participant level, the key change is really around the receipt and operational response to inverter limits. So participants will receive indicative inverter limits through the pre-dispatch reporting, specifically P5 and P30, and may need to rebid energy or F-gas availability depending on those limits. And this is probably the piece that industry has been most interested in, moving away from highly manual operational coordination towards something that is more scalable, transparent, and automated over time. There are also business process updates required to support receipt of inverter limits through EMMS data model or SCADA signals, as well as processes for responding to those limits operationally. In terms of the next steps, we are planning on publishing the final HLIA, or the high-level implementation assessment for inverter dispatch, in mid-May, so mid this month, which would provide additional delivery detail and address stakeholder feedback received through our engagement activities. And we are continuing to encourage participants to engage early with the reform team, particularly if you're interested to understand the interim solution testing arrangements or operational impacts in more detail. So we will continue progressing engagement and readiness activities over the coming months and provide further updates through the usual reform channels as well. And as always, you want to find out more, there are the links to the initiative webpage as well. Thank you, and we will move on to the next one. And the next one is BASLink determination and the participant support arrangements associated with that transition. This work is really focused on supporting the transition of BASLink from a market network service provider to a regulated TNSP, or a transmission network service provider, from 1st of July 2026. And because BASLink obviously plays a really important role operationally between Tasmania and the mainland, there are a number of market and system changes that need to occur to support that transition smoothly. So just to give you a bit of a context first, in February 2026, the AER made a final determination on APA Group's transmission revenue proposal for BASLink for the 2026-30 regulatory control period. Following that determination, APA notified AEMO of its intention to reclassify BASLink from a market network service provider to a regulated TNSP. So since then, AEMO has been working closely with APA, WICGrid, TAS Networks, and broader industry stakeholders to support that transition ahead of the 1st July 2026 commencement date. At a very high level, the objective here is really ensuring Basslink is accurately represented across AEMO systems, applications, and reporting processes as a regulated TNSP, while also minimizing operational and market risks during that transition period. In terms of the key milestones, AEMO published the final report on the settlement residue option rule change on 30th of April 2026, which incorporates Basslink into the SRA process from 1st of May. Industry testing and Q&A session is scheduled for next Friday, the 22nd of May, followed by the June SRA auction window running from 1st to 15th June, where participants will be able to test bids, offers, and data ingestion activities in pre-prod. And then, of course, the key milestone is the 1st of July 2026 go-live date for Basslink as a regulated TNSP. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. Perfect. So in terms of impacts, the primary participants affected are market participants involved in the SRA process, along with the transmission stakeholders, including APA, WIC Grid, and TAS networks. At a participant level, the key changes relate to bidding and dispatch arrangements associated with settlement residue options. So from Q3 2026, participants will be able to submit SRA bids and offers for Basslink as part of the standard auction process. There is also a transitional operational arrangement where AEMO will continue dispatching Basslink as an MNSP up until the 1st of July before it transitions into a TNSP management arrangements through constraints. There are also impacts across settlement and business processes, including updates required for SRA participation processes and Basslink representation within AEMO applications. In terms of immediate next steps, we are encouraging participants to review the final report associated with the SRA rule change and attend the industry testing and Q&A session scheduled for next Friday, the 22nd of May. We are also encouraging participants to actively test SRA bids, offers, and data ingestion activities in pre-prod during the June auction window, so any issues can be identified and actioned early on. So overall, the focus here is really on ensuring a smooth operational and market transition ahead of the July commencement date. And again, more information is on the project page linked right on the slide deck. And with that, I will hand it back to Jen to take us through IPRR.
Thanks, Rad. And yes, Jen, in terms of our group, in terms of our next initiative, this is really focusing on the incorporation of distributed energy resources. As we move through the transition, this becomes more and more important. So, Jen, an update on the IPRR initiative.
Thanks, Greg. So yes, there's just the one initiative at this stage sitting under distributed energy resources in that sort of fan diagram that Ulrika took you through previously, which is integrating price responsive resources into the NEM. Thanks, Gary. So why integrate price responsive resources into the NEM? It is quite a mouthful. I'm sure you're aware the market is being shaped by expanded participation in distributed energy resources or DER. And as energy demand grows and coal-fired generation retires, more of these renewables are coming online. And we already are seeing the effects of that. So millions of new small-scale price responsive resources, for example, batteries, are forecast to enter the market over the next 25 years in particular. And there's already a huge amount of growth happening in this space. So this rapid growth in energy resources in both the consumer and distributed side means that these hidden price responsive resources and their behaviour is creating risks to efficient market outcomes and operational performance, including system security and reliability of the grid. So the IPRR rule aims for better integration of these resources into the NEM and to address the challenge of unscheduled resources, which are currently being aggregated and operated dynamically to respond to NEM price signals. So IPRR is comprised of three elements. So there's dispatch mode, there's an incentive framework, and there's also a monitoring and and reporting framework. So the dispatch mode is all about integrating the unscheduled price responsive resources into NEM scheduling processes. There's an incentive framework, and that's really about encouraging uptake and participation in IPRR and in dispatch mode. And there's up to 50 million there with some potential top-ups to encourage that. The monitoring and reporting framework. So this is around understanding and managing the impacts of these unscheduled price responsive resources on operational demand forecasting processes and market outcomes. And of course, once we've done all this work, it's really important to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of this and report back to industry. So the key benefits include by lowering barriers to entry, it provides opportunities for aggregators to participate in central dispatch. It also improves visibility on AEMO's side of CER and DER, and this allows better matching of supply and demand, driving market and system efficiencies. And if effectively integrated, it reduces the need for duplicative investment in large-scale storage and infrastructure. And we had an estimate of 4.1 billion, and in our draft ISP for 2026, which was recently published, that has gone up to 7 billion in potential avoided costs. So it's a significant reform with significant potential benefits. So dates to remember, the monitoring and reporting framework began back on the 1st of January of this year, and the unscheduled price responsive reporting first quarterly data set was actually published on the 13th of April, so that's available online. Next slide, thanks. So this reform is really all about market participants opting to participate in IPRR. It is voluntary, as well as TNSPs and DNSPs. So the participant change impacts are to DNSPs and TNSPs, as mentioned, also voluntarily scheduled resource providers, or VSRPs. And they need to implement capability to nominate and operate VSRs and look at operational participation in the incentive mechanism. There's also market participants not participating in IPRR who may need to assess any impacts to their systems and processes from IPRR, including any impacts from data model changes and portfolio management system interface changes. So thinking about next timing and steps, you'll notice that there's a few points here. AEMO is currently consulting with our stakeholders on a temporary pause and a reset of the delivery path for the IPRR reform, including the timeline. So this follows careful evaluation and detailed implementation planning and identification of delivery challenges. And we're hosting an information session for affected participants this Friday, the 15th. And there's a link on the slide if you would like to attend. We'll also be following up with a consultation paper later this month, early June, and we'll be seeking formal feedback. And then we'll have a follow-up session for stakeholders in late June, early July. If you'd like to find out more, you can head to the IPRR page on the website. We do also have dedicated frequently asked questions around this particular reset of where we are at now. You can also email us. So I've covered quite a lot of initiatives today, not as many as RAD, but quite a few. So if you do have any questions on real-time data, shortening the settlement cycle, Project Energy Connect, market integration, or IPRR, you can pop them in the chat, or you can reach out via NEM Reform. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen. And our last set of in-flight initiatives, those grouped as foundational and strategic. Now, these don't necessarily have a single rule determination to drive them. They're looking at strengthening operational capabilities or building foundational and strategic capability that'll support both the transition of legacy operations and also a more efficient move to future initiatives. So with that, we'll hand back to Radhika to take us through the first couple of the foundational and strategic initiatives that focus on IDAM, IDEX, and portal consolidation. Radhika, back back to you.
Thanks, Greg. And I promise these are the last ones I'm going to speak to. I'm sure like some of you are bored of my voice already, so I'll make it very quick. The first one I'll touch under the foundational and strategic one is IDX Foundation. Now, this one's a little bit different to some of the reforms we've discussed before. It's really more of an enabling capability for the broader reform program and for the future market services as well. So briefly, as an overview of IDX Foundation, we know that today's data exchange environment is quite fragmented, which adds another layer of complexity for participants and makes interoperability across systems more difficult than it probably needs to be. So IDX, alongside IDAM and portal consolidation, forms part of the broader MITI, or the Market Interface Technology Enhancements Program, which is really about creating a more modern and streamlined framework for market-facing services. And specifically, IDX itself has two components. The first one is IDX Foundation, which establishes the core exchange capabilities and standards. And the second is IDX Transition, which focuses on migrating legacy NEM services onto the new platform over time. So rather than continuing to layer new reforms onto increasingly fragmented exchange arrangements, the idea is to create a common set of patterns, protocols, and technologies that can support future reforms more effectively. In terms of the key benefits, participants should see more consistent and secure exchange processes, while AEMO benefits from improved governance, centralized data management, and enhanced operational efficiency. And ultimately, consumers will benefit as well through improved service reliability, responsiveness, and a faster implementation of the reform initiatives. In terms of key dates and timings, IDX Release 1 is scheduled from 1st of July 2026 to support the basic PAR quality data delivery. That's then followed by industry testing of foundational capabilities running through late 2026 and into early 2027. Before the planned go live of IDX Foundation in March 27. And then in Q1 2027, there's a planned decision point around the updated IDX transition business case and broader transition planning activities. Next slide, please. Thanks, Gary. Thank you. So in terms of impacts, all market and industry participants will ultimately be impacted by IDX transition activities over time, although the initial impact associated with IDX Foundation itself is relatively low. For Release 1 specifically, the primary impacted participants are DNSPs, metering coordinators, and metering data providers supporting BBQD. And then for Release 2, capability testing will be available in pre-prod, and participation in testing will essentially be optional for participants. I think the important thing to call out here is that this is really intended to be a long-term foundational uplift for the market rather than just a once-off reform delivery. So the immediate focus is on participant engagement through the MITI working group, supporting testing environment involvement, and continuing broader IDX transition impact assessments. There is also planned capability testing and pre-prod aligned with the broader MITI Foundation released industry testing activities later in 2026. So we'll continue working closely with the industry as the foundation capabilities mature and transition planning progresses. Thank you. And we will move on to the next initiative under this, which is Identity and Access Management, or IDAM. Similar to IDX, this one sits within the broader MITI program and is really focused on modernizing and strengthening the way participants securely access AEMO market systems and services. And while this might sound quite technology focused on the surface, it's actually a really important foundational capability for supporting future reforms and improving cyber resilience across the market ecosystem. So like I said, IDAM sits alongside IDX and portal consolidation as part of the broader MITI program, which is aimed at delivering a more secure, streamlined, and effective framework for AEMO's market-facing services. So at a very high level, IDAM is really focused on strengthening identity and access management capabilities across the market environment. And given AEMO's role in operating critical market infrastructure, there's obviously a strong focus on ensuring systems and access controls continue evolving alongside broader cybersecurity expectations and obligations. One of the key drivers behind this initiative is reducing security vulnerabilities and minimizing the overall attack surface, because identity management is often considered one of the most significant risk areas within the cybersecurity environments. In terms of the key benefits, the benefits here include improved cybersecurity, a better user experience through self-service functionality, greater operational efficiency through automation, and alignment with obligations under the Security of Critical Infrastructure, or the SOCI Act. And honestly, I think one of the most important things here is balancing stronger security outcomes with making participants' interactions simpler and more streamlined over time. In terms of the key dates, current planning includes industry testing running from December 2026 through to March 2027, followed by the planned IDAM go live in March 2027. And following that, IDAM transition activities are expected to commence from March 2027 with a proposed 12-month transition window, although those timelines will continue to be discussed with the industry through our regular forums as well. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. So in terms of impacts, both registered participants and non-registered organizations interacting with AEMO systems will ultimately be affected by the transition to the new IDAM capabilities. If we look at a participant level, organizations will transition to updated IDAM features and functionality through an updated portal interface. Participants will also need to consider how they implement and operationalize certain security features internally. Think about things like multi-factor authentication and broader identity governance processes. And importantly, there'll be preparation activities required ahead of go live, including establishing organization hierarchies and determining migration approaches as well. In terms of the next steps, IDAM foundation testing, like I said, is currently planned between December 2026 and Feb 2027. With go live and migration activities commencing from March 2027. There are also industry workshops currently underway through our Mighty Working Group and focus groups as well. And those engagement activities will continue through the rest of this year. And we will continue working closely with participants to support readiness, transition planning, and broader engagement as the solution matures as well. So that was all about the IDAM. And we will move on to the last one of the Mighty initiatives, which is portal consolidation. Again, like IDAM and IDX, this one sits under the broader Mighty program and is really focused on improving the overall participant experience when interacting with AEMO systems and services. So at a very high level, the objective here is to move toward a more unified and streamlined portal experience rather than participants needing to navigate multiple separate interfaces and processes across the market landscape, which I think most people would welcome as well. Unlike some of the other initiatives, this one is not really tied to a specific rule change. It's really focused on improving the user experience and simplifying participant interactions with AEMO systems. The delivery approach for portal consolidation is phased, with initial IDX screen builds supporting the BPQD release now complete and currently progressing through testing. Work has also commenced on the IDX Foundation and IDAM Foundation screen builds, with design and build activities occurring iteratively and in parallel to support overall program delivery timelines. And importantly, some of the technical uplift, portal framework, and minor UI changes originally intended for the BPQD July release have now been deferred to a later release date, which is still to be confirmed. So the immediate focus remains on progressive, the foundational build activities in a staged and manageable way. In terms of the key benefits, the initiative is really intended to provide participants with a more consistent and simplified experience, while also improving operational efficiency, governance, and reliability across AEMO's market-facing services. And longer term, this also supports future reforms by providing a more unified framework and user experience across the ecosystem. In terms of timing, like I mentioned, IDX BPQD release activities are currently aligned to the July 2026 release, with additional IDAM, IDX, and broader portal consolidation enhancement build activities continuing through 2026 and into 2027. And the next slide, please, Carrie. Thank you. So in terms of impacts, this initiative reflects and affects both registered market participants and non-registered organizations interacting with AEMO services. That includes NSPs, intending market participants, candidate organizations, and participant forecast providers. And because this initiative is primarily focused on front-end user experience and portal interactions, the impacts are generally more operational and process-oriented rather than involving major market rule or settlement changes. So really, this is about making participant interactions with AEMO systems more consistent and intuitive over time. In terms of the key next steps, the current focus is on completing REX front-end screen building testing activities for the PPQD release, while continuing the broader foundation build activities across IDAM, IDX, and portal consolidation. So there's quite a bit of parallel activity occurring at the same time across all the Mighty initiatives to support the broader foundational uplift program. And as those capabilities continue maturing, we'll keep on engaging with participants through the usual Mighty and the reform engagement channels as well. And that is all from me today. And I will gladly hand back to Leonard now to take us through the STPASA replacement. Thank you.
Thanks, Rad. So I will be talking about the short-term projected assessment of system adequacy, also known as STPASA, and the replacement. So this slide outlines the replacement and why it really matters. At a high level, it's about strengthening short-term reliability forecasting as the power system becomes more complex. STPASA is a very important operational tool for both AEMO and market participants. It helps assess short-term reliability and identify emerging supply risks. As the generation mix changes and operating conditions become more dynamic, the current approach is starting to show its limits in the level of insight and confidence it can provide. Excuse me. What the STPASA replacement is intended to do is improve short-term forecasting capability so supply risk can be identified earlier and operational and market decisions can be made in a more timely and informed way. The STPASA also helps improve alignment with market and rule changes. For example, the new system will make it easier to incorporate updated rules more quickly and support more accurate reserve calculations, which is important from both a compliance and an operational perspective. In terms of timing, there are a few key milestones to keep in mind. First, a technical workshop on forecasting and uncertainty margins was held this Monday. Second, an internal production release of PDPASA is planned for August. Third, a parallel run of the replacement PASA processes is expected to begin around November, subject to confirmation. And finally, new procedures are anticipated to commence from March 2027, following the parallel run. Overall, this work sits within AEMO's broader effort to strengthen operational capabilities and make sure short-term reliability tools remain fit for purpose as the system continues to evolve. Next slide, please. This slide is about who is impacted by STPASA replacement and how participants can stay engaged as the work progresses. The participants most directly affected are network service providers, scheduled and semi-scheduled generators, transmission network service providers, and integrated resource providers. These participants use STPASA outputs to support operational planning and market responses, so accuracy, transparency, and usability of the new system will really matter. In terms of implementation, the project is expected to progress in 3 phases. Phase 1 from August 2026 is an internal AEMO production release to assess and evaluate the new capability. Phase 2, expected around November, involves industry testing and a parallel run, where the legacy and the replacement systems will operate side by side. Phase 3, currently anticipated for March 2027, is the commencement of the new STPASA procedures and systems following the parallel run. In parallel, AEMO is also progressing consultation on the reserve level declaration guidelines, with final procedures currently planned for publication in early July. From AEMO's perspective, this work involves teams across operations, system design, and digital delivery, which reflects just how important SDPANSA is across forecasting, reliability, and market operations. AMA encourages impacted participants to stay engaged through the consultation and upcoming testing activities. In particular, the Powerline Run will be an important opportunity to validate outputs, understand what is changing, and prepare internal processes ahead of the full transition. AMA looks forward to progressing this work with industry, and I will hand back to Greg.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Radhika. That was an overview of the initiatives that are in flight with scheduled commencement dates and go live dates. As you can see, 2026, early 2027 is quite a busy period for the reform program and also for those participants that are looking to implement and start to roll out a number of those initiatives. This next section, though, looks at some of the initiatives that we expect and are progressing through policy determinations, planning, and will form part of in-flight initiatives as they reach that stage. So they're what we're terming our anticipated initiatives, and I'll hand over to Ulrika to provide an overview of a number of those that are currently being progressed. Ulrika, back to you.
Thanks, Greg, and hi again. As Greg mentioned, this is about what's ahead in the near term, and it's really to give you a sense of what's next for implementation and what to start to be aware of and plan for. So rather than going through each row of the next slide, I'm going to highlight the key themes. And the first, I suppose, theme that's coming out of this is that we're seeing anticipated changes in relation to electric vehicles and future electricity demand. So this is about improving data so that the system can better plan for how EVs, electric vehicles, will be used and charged. So this supports more efficient infrastructure decisions and better outcomes as uptake grows of that technology. Secondly, there are also updates to market settings, including how the system responds during periods of sustained high prices. And they're technical changes, but they're aimed at maintaining stability and protecting consumers over time. A number of initiatives also focus on consumer-related processes, including support for people relying on life support equipment, as well as the retailer last resort arrangements. And these are about ensuring that the system continues to operate safely and reliably for customers under all conditions. And finally, the theme that also comes through this is a continued focus on metering and data quality. So this might seem behind the scenes, but it's really critical for accurate billing, transparency, control, and trust in the system. And we'll continue to update stakeholders as these anticipated initiative progresses. As Greg mentioned, they're not being implemented today, and there is a level of uncertainty in regards to scope, timing, and progression. So if any of these items are of interest to you, as timing and impacts become clear, we tend to update stakeholders across all the program's channels of engagement and communication. Right, that's it for me. Thanks very much. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Ulrika. And Gary, if we just move on to the next section. So we've completed an overview of in-flight and anticipated initiatives. There's ones with formal and approaching implementation timeframes. I'm now going to hand over to Michelle, who will take us through an overview of the updates to the current roadmap. We're now up to version 8, and that continues to be refined as policy positions change, initiatives are introduced. She'll take us through an update of what those changes are and the impacts, but also walk us through some of the tools that participants have available to start to assess potential impacts on your operation and your organisation based on your particular position in the market. So, Michelle, with that, over to you.
Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so I'm Michelle, and I'm part of the Strategic Market Reform team, and we work very closely with the Strategic Enablement team with the delivery of this roadmap publication. So I'll be just touching on the key takeaways of the roadmap and also the participant impact assessment dashboard. So next slide, please. So as you know, the roadmap was published on the 11th of May. And as part of that, we've published the main roadmap Excel workbook, which includes timelines of current and upcoming initiatives, the initiative briefs document, which is a 2-pager on key reforms that have progressed. And lastly, we've also published the program scope and governance document. For those who are not familiar, so what is the roadmap? So the NEM reform implementation roadmap provides a forward-looking, integrated view of reforms expected to impact the market over the coming years. So it's a strategic tool that is intentionally aimed at a high level. So this is a high-level document. Its purpose is to help AMO market bodies and market participants to plan and deliver policy change in a coordinated way rather than responding to reform one by one as they occur. So the roadmap provides a consolidated view of the reforms at a point in time. The main goals of the roadmap is designed to increase transparency, build knowledge and awareness across a range of reforms, and through this, it reduces delivery risk, minimizes avoidable implementation costs, and support the better sequencing and prioritization of reform activities. So just like previous updates of the roadmap, we've collaborated with the RDC in this publication as well, and in alignment with our change management processes. The roadmap is published usually twice a year. Next slide, please. So I must acknowledge that this iteration of the roadmap has been quite a substantial update, with 22 electricity initiatives and 4 gas market initiatives that are material in nature. So these are scope or timing changes that we've updated. General updates have been put through the roadmap, which is revising project timelines, scope updates based on the latest publicly available information. We've also included new rule changes and new policy development work streams. Initiatives that have been implemented have been removed from the roadmap, and a new worksheet has been captured to record these removed initiatives. So whether it's been implemented or if there's been a scope change and for that reason it's been taken off the program, it's been recorded in this new worksheet. We have also further aligned this iteration of the roadmap with the National CER roadmap. So we've looked at the CER-DR initiatives within our roadmap and map them much closely to the priorities that are currently being progressed by the ECMC through their national CER roadmap. So for instance, I recall a question raised in the chat about the dynamic operating envelopes. So yes, it's been removed from this iteration of the roadmap, but that's not a permanent removal. It's just because it's not currently a progress priority by the ECMC. So as these pathways get more firmed up and more information comes through, we'll be updating the roadmap to capture the latest status of the National CER roadmap. So similarly, we've also put through the ECMC's key or progress recommendations that have come out through the NEM wholesale market settings review in this roadmap update, and provided some indicative project timelines on the NEM review as well. Besides general updates like this, we've also reclassified the reforms in our roadmap based on new pathways across the suite of roadmap material. So earlier on in the briefing, slide 10 included a fan diagram which included our revised reform pathways. So what we've done is we've moved away from the ESB's post-2025 pathways. The main reason behind that is a majority of the ESB's post-2025 reforms have already been implemented or currently being in flight. So we've looked at the reforms afresh and regrouped them based on the true intent of that reform and to reflect the future landscape more suitably. So the trends we are seeing from the roadmap is the next 12 months. That's the second quarter of this year to the second quarter of 2027 represents a particularly intense delivery schedule with 9 key initiatives slated to go live during this period. So we at AIMO acknowledge that both AIMO and market participants will feel similar challenges as we navigate through this workload together. There'll be pressure for limited resources, and alongside, we'll all be competing in terms of our investment priorities in our particular organizations. Beyond this 12-month period, the workload, there's also a bit of uncertainty because there could be policy and rule development stemming from, as I mentioned, the National CR Roadmap, the NEM review, the gas review. So currently these work streams are in the policy development stage within the roadmap, which will continue from mid to late 2027. But beyond this, when the delivery will take place of those work streams, so with each roadmap update, we will make sure that it's captured accurately and we provide that clarity and transparency to industry as we move forward. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the 26 material changes. So this slide categorizes them based on scope and or timing changes, or whether they are a new initiative that has been added to the roadmap. I won't go into details of these changes as the material is all available as part of our roadmap update, but I will quickly define what a material time change is. So a material time change is a change in a project timeline of plus or minus 3 months. And a material scope changes here is if we receive a publication of a draft or final rules, a publication of HLIA, it's considered a material scope change. So next slide, please. So this slide just shows the supporting roadmap artifacts, which is the initiative briefs document and the program and governance document, which is available on our website. Worth mentioning that this time we've consolidated our scope and governance documents into one document. We merged them. So that's just one of the changes you will notice. Next slide, please. So the final tool I would like to step you through is the Participant Impact Assessment Dashboard. So the PIA dashboard is again a high-level strategic tool, and the aim is to provide participants a quarter-on-quarter understanding of each initiative's impact over the various stages of its implementation until it goes live. So it uses a traffic light system to convey the level of congestion across the various stages, from procedure consultation to solution delivery, testing, and then finally go live. So using the PIA tool, you can toggle between impacts and view it as a sector level or as an industry as a whole. I'd like to mention that the PIA includes only committed initiatives, so not the upcoming initiatives that are in early stages, but more the committed ones, and preferably initiative with an HLIA that has already been made public. So just like the roadmap, we've updated the PIA dashboard and the data behind it for changes in scope, timing, any key milestones have all been captured. So we've done our best here to represent participant impacts over the coming years in the PIA tool. However, we strongly encourage participants to do your own impact assessments of the NEM reform program and accounting for your individual circumstances and also other programs that might be underway. And we are always open to feedback on this tool and how useful it is to your organization. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this slide here just summarizes the sector level impacts, the three main sectors here. And the trend we are seeing is very common across each sector, where there's a flurry of activity in the next 12 months for AEMO and industry. And across each sector, there's around 8 to 10 reforms to be implemented. That is with overlap because there are reforms that are common across each sector. So similar pressures for all the sectors during procedure consultation to solution delivery. As indicated in this screen shot, you can see the amber to red shading in the next 12 months. So it is quite evident that all participants will feel pressure of some form. So since we heard about each initiative in detail from my colleagues before, I won't go into the initiative level impacts in detail, but I'll just quickly mention for each sector which reforms are the key drivers. So for the wholesale sector, the key reforms are the key reform drivers are improving security frameworks, spec market integration, shortening the settlement cycle, and IPRR. For the retail and metering sector, the key reform drivers will be real-time data for consumers, FTA, shorten the settlement cycle, and IPRR again. Lastly, for the networks, it'll be the MSR, Metering Services Review, Release 2, IPR, and FTA. That will be the key drivers. I like to call out that in the PIA dashboard this time, we've retained the current implementation timings of IPRR, which was slated for May 27. However, with the next update of the PIA, we will incorporate any revised timings that will come out of the IPRR consultation that's currently ongoing. So thank you so much, and I will hand over back to Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, for that overview of the roadmap, those initiative briefs and tools, and the PIA tool. So that brings us to the conclusion of the briefing part of our sessions, covering our in-flight objectives, the roadmap. Like to, Gary, if we go on to the next slide, from a Q&A point of view, we're aware that there've been a few questions posted in the Q&A, and I think that we're just in the process of answering the last one there. So as well as that, we have gathered over the period a number of themes of questions. I'll put up here generalized responses, and I guess the first one here ties nicely into the summary that we've just been providing from a participant point of view of how you can get an understanding of the timelines and impacts to the various initiatives under the NEM reform program. I hope what we've demonstrated through this briefing is some of those tools that you can look at from a forward planning point of view. The roadmap itself, the PIA, the participant impact tool, accessing high-level impact implementations assist initiatives as they're published. And I guess the the output there is for each organisation, you will be impacted in different ways by different initiatives over the time period. So that's what a number of these tools allow you to dig down and understand there. When it moves to active implementation, we will talk about our monthly forums and working groups for people for support, working through actively implementing and participating in these initiatives going forward. So there's a number of tools, a number of approaches there. From an energy transition point of view, we have, how does this relate to the overall energy transition? And I guess what we've tried to highlight here is that our reform programs focuses on the implementation of initiatives as they reach a final rule or a policy determination through statutory processes. So this is the step of, as those policy positions are formed, become implementable, that becomes the focus of the NEM reform program. Similarly, the tie into the nationally energy objectives, we're focused, or this program is focused on the implementation of rules that are made and policy decisions. That's the responsibility of the AEMC and the jurisdictions. And we reflect that approach in driving through the implementation of those rules. And similarly with jurisdictional priorities, we don't look to necessarily monitor or drive those jurisdictional priorities more so than as they have been reflected in the policy changes and the rule changes that are part of the implementation approach. And lastly, we have received a number of questions over time about the interaction with the CER roadmap, and I think Michelle, in her summary there of how that's been aligned with the roadmap and will continue to be so, has provided a great position on that. So there are a number of the general questions. We will be publishing this slide deck after the session, and hopefully that provides some clarity around a number of those themes that you have been asking, or people have been asking in general. So Gary, if we could go on to the next slide, and that's really based on this briefing, how should you look to get involved? And on the next slide, we're suggesting a number of checks. Access the briefing information, access the roadmaps, look to understand the impacts for your organisation based on the roles that your organisation plays in the NEM. Consider advancing that impact assessment and how you should be involved or wish to be involved in the active implementation of those initiatives where you see an impact. And if we go on to the next slide, this really summarises some ways for your organisation to become involved more formally with the NEM reform program. You'll see there on the right, there are a number of program forums. They look at different focuses. So there is an executive forum, which meets 3 per year based on a nomination from your organisation, dealing with the executive level discussion, really on the program overview and an overall status update. There is a reform delivery committee which focuses on long-term implementation planning. One of the outputs of that delivery is the approved and the updated implementation roadmap. Then within the forum itself, we have a program consultative forum, which is a monthly session that focuses on the progression of those in-flight initiatives, their status and coordination across groups. Our implementation forum, which really does look at the digital or the systems implementation, the actual readiness of each of those in-flight initiatives. 2 procedural consultation forums, the EWCF, that looks at the wholesale procedures, and the Retail Consultative Forum, looking at the retail B2M procedures, an industry testing working group when each initiative gets to the point we mentioned through our in-flight discussions, reaching an industry testing or a market trial phase. So that's the working group that comes together to focus on the planning, coordination and the execution of each of those industry tests. The forum also, or the program also supports a number of working groups which look in detail at individual initiatives as they progress. And I think Radhika in particular mentioned the Market Interface Technology Enhancements Working Group, the MIGHTY Working Group, which is looking at a number of aspects across IDEX, IDAM and portal consolidation. And you can see there another couple of the key ones. There are formal working groups. We will also, as you can see, there's also an opportunity to subscribe to a program newsletter. We will be holding our next public briefing, and you can contact us at nemreform.aemo.com.au. We're happy to come and discuss with your organisation the most appropriate way for you to be involved in those initiatives that have potential impact on you. So with that, that brings us to the close of our briefing session. I'd like to thank you all for your participation. I hope we've been able to provide some useful insight to you on the progression of the NEM reform program. I particularly would like to thank the group of presenters here who have jumped up and presented a wide-ranging number of topics. And in closing, we look forward to continuing working with you all as the energy transition takes shape and continues apace. So thank you all.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Greg. Thanks, everyone.